Okay, so I looked back on my videos and apparently I didn't do this one. Um, yeah, my hair needs to get done. It looks terrible. Um, anyway, so I shared this story with Karen a couple months ago, and oh well, and anyway, so this is how it's gonna go. I was about 24 years old when this happened, and um, I was in Anaheim. We're at Dad's complex, and apparently there was a theft. There had been multiple thefts happening at the apartment complex, and they had pictures. Well, the pictures was of somebody that looked like me. It wasn't me, and a car similar to mine. I had a 1987 Chevy Spectrum, and it was a burgundy color. It was a four-door. It was a small, mid-size vehicle, and this person that resembled me, that had a similar car that was like mine, did thievery. She was caught on camera, Jim's camera. They did some type of surveillance because Jim did maintenance and security, stealing stuff out of people's back patios. And they swore it was me. Well, when the pictures were developed, they were, Debbie was the manager, and she looked at the pictures, and they said, "Who is this?" And she instantly said, "That's Teresa." So Dad tells my mother that there's a problem, and I've been coming there and stealing stuff from people's backyards. So she had called me up from Grandma's house and told me to come at a certain day at a certain time, whatever. And she wanted to talk to me, and she was very curt with me on the phone. She didn't tell me what this had to do with. She never did. She always confronted me face to face. It was never on the phone, except when I knew I was sassing her or something, then I already knew. But this I did not. And she had told me to make sure I presented myself properly to her when I came, and I already knew what that meant. And I asked her, what did I do that I don't know what I did? And she said, "We'll have that talk when I see you. And you make sure that you do this, 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 and this." So I did. I took a bath. I was up at Joanne's house. I got my bath ready and shaved everything. And washed my hair, conditioned it. It needed probably to be trimmed, but that didn't happen because she wanted to see me, and she wanted to see me now type thing. I had a couple of days to prepare. And it was on one of my days off. I was off on Thursdays and Fridays, and then I had to work the weekends. I believe I was working security still at this point. So I arrive in Anaheim. I barely get out of my car, and she's right there at my car waiting for me because she already knew, and I better be on time. She gave me a time to be there, and I better be there, and which I was. So she gets me into the RV, and I'm on my knees in front of her, and sometimes that's just how it happened. I would be on my knees in front of her. And she had the belt that she would whip me with. And she started asking me about my car being seen. They have pictures, the stuff that was being taken out of the backyards and from people. There were several pictures. There was like 7, 10 pictures, whatever. There was a lot of pictures that were taken. And this woman, she was older than me actually. And she ended up being a druggie. But she had hair that was similar to mine. The length was similar to mine. They captured her from the back, from the side. And in retrospect, the picture resembled me, but it wasn't me. So she's asking me about this, and she thought I was lying to her. I was not lying to her. I didn't know what she was talking about. And I kept saying, I don't care if there's pictures. That's not me. And she was convinced that I was lying to her and I was stealing. There was a police report. So apparently, I'm not going to say there was a warrant out for my arrest, but there was a police report that had this description, blah, blah, blah. And she was going to get to the bottom of it. And so she was convinced, because she saw all the pictures, that I was lying to her, and she was not going to have me lie to her, and she was not going to have a daughter that was a thief. And so she whipped me. And after I got whipped, now to confess to me. You tell me, look me in the eyes and tell me the truth. And I kept telling her, it's not me. I don't care what pictures you saw. I got whipped again. This went on, a few times, probably a handful of times. I kept getting whipped. And whip me into confession is what she just wanted me to confess to her. And I would not confess to something that I didn't do. And she just confess to me, tell me the truth, and it'll all be over with. And I kept saying, Mama, I didn't do it. And I'm crying and crying and crying. And don't lie to me. I got slapped and got whipped some more. Well, the RV door was open, and normally when I got punished, she'd close it, but this time the door was open. Well, Uncle Tom and Uncle Wayne arrived. And their, Dad and Uncle Bud and them are outside. Jim came over. I heard Ollie say, I want the rest of the pictures. So she leaves me in the RV. I'm on my knees. And she goes out and she says, I want those pictures. I want to show those to Teresa. So she comes back in and she takes a few of the pictures, like 4 or 5 pictures. I think there was 5. And she lays them on the couch beside her, right in front of me. And she says, you tell me that those are not you. That is your car. That is you. Those are your clothes. And the woman had similar clothing to me also. I mean, like this identical outfit. And I'm looking, I was almost convinced that it really was me. And she says, and she grabbed a hold of I'm looking at the pictures, she grabbed a hold of my chin and raised it to her. And she says, now, you cannot deny that those are not you. She goes, I know what I've seen. I know this is you. Just confess and tell me the truth. Stop lying to me. And I took one of the pictures, and I'm looking at the pictures, and I'm like, I wouldn't do this. And I said, I was almost convinced that it really was me, and I just didn't remember that it was me doing it. Maybe I really was stealing, and I blanked it out. So it was like I was being brainwashed into believing that these pictures were of me. This was my car. And I was really stealing. So anyway, she's talking to me about it. And then Uncle Tom's like, Marie, come out here. We want to talk to you. She gets up and she walks out. And I'm looking at those pictures. Of course, I'm still crying. Well, they're out there talking. I don't know really what they said. And then I heard Uncle Tom saying, this isn't Teresa's car. This isn't her. So she comes back in mortified. I've already gotten whipped, 5 different times. Not 5 whacks, but whacks and then another time and another time, another time, 5 times. 5 different times. I got whipped. I got whipped a lot. And yelled at, slapped. And she looked at me and she put her hands over her mouth, and she looked at me and she pulled back. And she says, and she never apologized very much. And she says, darling, I've made a mistake. And she'd never admit fault. Never, hardly ever. And told me she was sorry. And I raised up at her and I said, I kept telling you I didn't do it. I wouldn't steal. I wouldn't do that. And she had brought me the rest of the pictures. Jim had brought them to Ollie. And they one of them came in, I think Dad did, which is Ollie, came in with the rest of the pictures, and because I wanted to see them. And I looked at him. I said, what would have made you think that this was me? Same type of car, same color, same build, this woman. But she ended up being older than me. I was 24, and this woman was like, I think 28, 30 years old, whatever. She was on drugs. She was, meth head or on speed, whatever. And she didn't rent there. She was like a girlfriend to somebody that lived there, something like that. And she wasn't supposed to be on the property. They ended up getting, Debbie and Jim, they ended up getting a restraining order on her and stuff like that. I don't remember if she ever got arrested for doing that. I don't remember. But at least I was in the clear. And so after her and I talked, and she was really remorsefully sorry that she punished me for no reason. I mean, looking back at that, I can understand her believing that it was me, just not at the time. And so I got the pictures, she handed them to me, and I said, I want to see. Well, Uncle Tom, Uncle Wayne, and Dad was outside still by my car, and they had one of the pictures, and my poor uncles, they looked at me so sorrowful. They know I got punished. They could hear it, and so I came out of the RV and walked up to him, and I said, what made you believe that it wasn't me? Uncle Tom and Uncle Wayne, Mr. Detectives, takes the pictures that were taken of the car and the girl, the woman by that car. They were matching it up to my car. And they found spots on that vehicle that you could clearly see was not my car. And age marks on it, whatever. Faded sun marks, I don't know what those are called. And so you're looking at the woman that resembled me from the side, a profile, and they were matching that up to me. And I'm like, oh, look at the clothing. I said, then you start looking at the clothing really carefully. And I said, I don't have clothes that are like that. My wardrobe. And it, was one of the blouses, if you looked at it really closely, I think Jim had a magnifying glass, and they were looking at the picture with this magnifying glass. And you could clearly see that it was not me. And oh my gosh, she felt so terrible. And I said, who said it was me? And Dad goes, Debbie said it was you. And so that's where it surfaced that's Teresa. Debbie was convinced it was me. And so I take off and I go right to Debbie's office, and I had some of the pictures in my hand. I said, you know, I started cursing because my mother wasn't around, and I said, what the hell? I said, why would you tell Dad this is me? I would not have stole anything. And excuse me. And Debbie goes, well, she goes, it looked like you. She goes, same car, same height, same build, same type of hair. And I said, yeah. I said, but my hair in front is different than hers. The woman that was doing the stealing out of these yards had straight hair on both sides. My hair at the time period, my hair was straight. And the color of the hair was pretty much the same. But in front, my hair was not straight. It had, you know, like a feathered whatever. I'd had like bangs, whatever. It flipped, whatever here, and stuff like that. And Debbie had said when she had was told that no, it was not me, then she realized who it really was. Well, that's what you should have went with. Instead of accusing me of doing this, oh yeah, that's Teresa. You know, whenever I was on Dad's property, my mother and my uncles were there. 98% of the time when I was there, they all were there. There were times that me and Tony went over there to Anaheim when the family wasn't there. But like I said, 98% of the time, the Waltmans were there, and my mother was there. And I had said to her, when would I have had time? I was always in your sight. If I was out of your sight, you know, God forbid, for 5 minutes, you guys would all come looking for me. I mean, I was in the bathroom this one time. Went to the bathroom. I was in the bathroom, I guess a bit too long, and my mother walks into the door. What are you doing? I'm going potty. And I was in the bathroom a little bit too long. Another time I opened up the door and she was right there. You know. And stay right here. Don't move. And then she went to the bathroom and then came out, and I better be standing right outside that door. If I was out of their sight, you know, like I said, 5-10 minutes. Where's Teresa? Where's Teresa? Where's Teresa? They'd go looking for me. So I said, with that, when would I have ever had time, I said, when I was around all of you, to go steal? Well, you could have come, you know, when we weren't here. Like I would have did that, especially in broad daylight. I said, I work security, remember? You know the hours I work. I work graveyard most of the time. And I told her, I said, if I was to steal, it would be at night. I said, and I said it wouldn't be on Dad's property. It would be probably where I'm working at. You know, I wouldn't do that. I said, but I wouldn't have stole it anyway. So yeah, she felt really bad. And Karen, I told that to Karen. I said, I know you don't like hearing this stuff. I'm sorry, but it did happen. And Mom was not going to have a daughter that was a thief or a liar. At least not from me. And, you know, she said, I told her, I said, you know, sometimes, I don't know about, like, when you guys were growing up, I said, or even when, you know, you were early mid-adults, Mom would jump to conclusions about things. And I said, she would be told stuff about me, and she would instantly believe it because I said, your Uncle Ollie would tell her, and of course she believed him because my father-in-law, Dad, Ollie, he would hear a lot of it from Debbie, from Nana, And he believed them. Debbie was his daughter. Nana was his mother-in-law. And even though him and Rose were divorced, Nana was still his mother-in-law. He always called her Nana. He always respected her. And if she told him something that had to do with me, he believed, and he passed that information on to my mother. And she believed him because that was her brother. And I was convicted before trial and got sentenced before I even had a chance to redeem myself, to tell you that it's not even true. And my mother was told a lot of stuff about me that was not ever true. The only thing, okay, not the only thing, there was others, but one of the things that she didn't want to believe that really did happen is when I got drunk. I got drunk in a bar with Daryl. Daryl does not remember it. It was after Dad passed away, and I was working for Daryl, and I was just, I don't know, in a mood. I actually remember after I had one or two rum and cokes, I told Daryl that she was my mother. He doesn't remember it, but then again, he doesn't remember being in a bar with me at one of his accounts, nor does he ever remember me working for him for 4 months. And I'm like, how can you not remember that? And that's significant. He goes, I'm sorry. He goes, I don't have any memory of that. But he knows I'm telling the truth, because I have explained and described things to Daryl that I would never know about if I wasn't there. And I described his house in Pomona, his first child, Samantha, when she was a baby, his first wife, Suzanne, not his first wife, second wife, Suzanne, the housekeeper that was Spanish, his what do you call it, tow truck company business, the security company. I described the colors of the uniforms, what they did, just all kinds of stuff. And he goes, you wouldn't know all that if you weren't there. No kidding. But he doesn't remember. I don't know why. I wish I had a picture of proof, but he does believe me that I did work for him. And I said to Tony, I said, do you remember me working for Daryl? Yep. Do you remember taking me to Daryl's house in Pomona and dropping me off sometime? Yep. Same thing with Rose. I asked her, I said, you know I worked for Daryl? She goes, yeah. She goes, we'd take you over there. Sometimes Daryl would drop me off at their apartment complex in Chino. I mean, I asked Debbie, I said, do you remember me working for Daryl? She goes, yeah. She goes, you didn't work for him for very long? I said, no, about 4 months. I have one of his business cards from the security company and the tow truck company. And I said, Rose and Nana both had those business cards. And I said, Rose kept it up by her phone, so she knew how to get a hold of me when I was over at your house working, you know. And he's like, oh, I guess you did work for me. No kidding. But so I got drunk this one night, and very, very, very drunk. And she called, and because she'd always call me every single night at a certain time. And this night, I called her. She was at Uncle Wayne and Aunt Sharon's house in Arizona. And I knew that. And I called her. And because she'd always call me like right after 7 o'clock, like 7:20. It would be before 8, every single night. And that's a promise that she made to me when she knew I was working for Daryl. And I decided to call her because Daryl didn't feel like working. We're going to the bar. Let's go to the bar. I'm like, okay. I have to make a phone call first. And so I called her, so she wouldn't call. And I was just like, I just thought I'd call you and on Daryl's phone and let him pay for the phone call, you know. what's going on? I'm like, oh, nothing, just sitting here. Daryl's getting ready for work. Daryl was actually standing right next to me, saying stuff in the background. Don't lie. I'm going, shut up, And I think that she knew something was up because I'm the one who called, and she had told me when she saw me I was acting too suspicious. But anyway, we left. I said, I love you. Okay, I'll talk to you tomorrow, blah, blah, blah. So we go to the bar, and, so while I was gone out of the house, she called. No answer. She called again. No answer. A couple hours later, she called again. And she called, I think the last phone call she said she made, it was after 1 o'clock, well after midnight. No answer. She goes, if you were manning, and this is when she saw me, if you were manning the phone, you would have answered the phone. But she knew I wasn't there. I was somewhere. And so, anyway, she calls the next morning. It wasn't even 8:30, and I had a hell of a hangover. I was sicker than a dog. And she called. Daryl comes into the room and gets me, and he goes, Aunt Maria's on the phone. I go, tell her I'll call her back. I don't feel good. He comes back to the phone. She wants to talk to you now, and you better go to the phone. So I go to the phone, and I'm like going, hello? And her voice is not the sweet mama voice, Aunt Marie's voice, none of that. Why wouldn't you come to the phone? I go, I don't feel good. I said, I'm tired. Why don't you feel good? And why are you tired? And I told her, I said, my stomach hurts. I think I got the flu. Why do you think you got the flu? She says. And I said, because I keep throwing up. And then she repeated, and she goes, you're throwing up. What are you throwing up? Liquid. Bad mistake right there. What other symptoms do you have besides you're throwing up liquid and your stomach hurts? I said, my head hurts. I'm dizzy. She knew right then and there. Oh, I was at a bar drinking. I don't know. How come she automatically knew? She automatically knew. Well, she wanted to give me the benefit of the doubt. So, anyway, she told me, I was on the phone for very long, and she said, when did these symptoms start? And I told her I don't know, early in the morning, because I didn't officially want to lie, because I didn't know she was calling all night long, because she didn't tell me that on the phone. And she's like, well, I'll call you in a couple of days. Darling, I hope you feel better. I love you. I'll see you soon. Yeah, we saw me soon. Well, anyway, a couple days later, I'm back at Rose's house later that day. And I was in bed sick and stuff like that. Well, anyway, she ended up calling Rose. Rose didn't have a problem with telling her I got drunk. Tied one on. I was sicker than a dog. And so anyway, she told Rose not to say nothing to me and just said that she'll see me in a couple of days. That they were coming down and they'll be at Aunt Noreen's house. Make sure I'm there. And so I get all better, and I don't remember how, because I didn't have a car, I don't remember how I got to Aunt Noreen's house, but I got to Aunt Noreen's house. Either Daryl, I think Daryl dropped me off. Daryl drove me there, I believe. And I was going to stay with her for a couple of days. And I get there, she comes out of the RV, because she was waiting for me, and she says, you get in here. I go, I have to go potty first. So I went to the bathroom, open up the door to the bathroom, and she's standing right there, grabs a hold of me. Let's go. we go to the RV. Oh, I got in trouble for this. And I goes to the RV with her, and closes the door, and she had said to me, we're talking, and she goes, it's been brought to my attention. No, before that, she told me she was glad I was better, that I must have had the flu. Do I think that I had the flu? And I'm like, I had something. Because I still did not want to officially lie to her, even though I lied to her officially over the phone. And she had said, it's been brought to my attention, and darling, I told you, because the situation over the incident from when on Ollie's funeral with that crap. She wanted to give me the benefit of the doubt, and she goes, it's been brought to my attention, and I don't want to believe this about you. She says, but then you were drinking. I was told that you really tied one on, and you were in a bar getting drunk. Is that true? And I looked at her like, oh my God, man, now I have to confess. And I got up from the couch where I was sitting, and I went to her side of the couch in the RV, and I sat there, and I grabbed a hold of her hands, and I looked at her, and I said, throughout all of these years, of every story I said that you heard about me, that I did something that you found out that it was not true, I wish to God that I could tell you this is not true. And I just looked at her, and I started having tears in my eyes, because I knew this was going to hurt her, or she was already hurt. And she says, what are you saying? And I said, Mama, I'm sorry to tell you that what you were told is true. And she looked at me, and she went back in a little bit of a shock and surprise. And she says, what do you mean it's true? And I told her how I went to the bar, and I was drunk, and what I did, and all this kind of stuff. I told her the whole entire story, and I don't got time to go into the whole entire story because I'm getting off work. And she said, through all these years, have I ever given you any reason to fear me? And I said, no, ma'am. I said, you haven't. Then what gave you the reason? What made you have the reason to lie to me, and to lie to me now? And I told her, I said, I had every intention, I said, of telling you the truth. I said, when you came, I said, I wanted to look you in the eyes, I said, and tell you that I lied to you over the phone. I'm sorry. And I said, but this is what I did. And like I said, I told her the whole entire story. And she said, how many other times did you lie to me? How do I know I can trust you? And I told her, I've never lied to you. This is the only time I ever lied to you. And why did you decide to lie to me? And I said, because I was crying. And I said, because I said, Grandma's in the hospital sick. She might die. And I said, and I know this would upset you and make you mad. I said, and I didn't want to make you mad and upset, especially when you were at Uncle Wayne's house. I said, and you weren't here. And I said, I'd rather you just get mad and upset right in front of me. I said, and I'd just come clean. I said, and tell you the truth. And she goes, you don't think that didn't upset me? She goes, I knew you were lying to me. And that's how I knew that she called several times that night. Because I called her and she knew something was up. And so she had a feeling, a bad feeling, something was definitely not right. And that's why she kept calling. She said, I didn't sleep that whole entire night. She goes, I was up so worried about you that something happened, because I know that you went out on patrols with Daryl and I told you not to go. And I just had a feeling something bad happened. She goes, but not this. She goes, I didn't think that you would be, I would have heard that you were inside of a bar, drunk, drinking, and causing ruckus. She heard that I was like a wild person inside the bar. I probably really was. And so because Uncle Wayne questioned Daryl and stuff. Oh yeah, I got a whipping for lying and deceiving her. And after all of that, I asked her, I said, if me telling you, I said, and I didn't lie to you and told you that I got drunk, I said, would I have gotten a whipping? She goes, I don't know. She goes, I would have gotten after you about it. She said, I would have tried to understand why your reason for getting drunk, and I told her the reason why. And she goes, but not this. She goes, you are not going to lie to me and get away with it. She goes, I'm not punishing you. I didn't get punished for going into a bar and getting drunk. And she gave me, oh my God, the what for about it. And I'll go into that later, a different video. But she goes, I'm punishing you. She goes, for lying to me. You blatantly lied to me over the phone. She goes, you could have told me the truth. Yes, I would have gotten upset. Yes, I would have got mad at you. Yes, I would have dealt with you when I saw you. She goes, but I've had to wait to address this with you for the last week. She was not happy at all. Can't say I don't blame her. But she wasn't having it. And I gotta go. And I'll finish up my story later. Especially when it's not so bright.